You'll see in the screenshot that I've selected DC Science Field Test Spring 2015. It's extremely important that you make this selection when going into work with data for this administration. Your default is going to be set to whatever it was you were looking at the last time you were in PearsonAccess. So the first login to CDC, you'll need to make that selection. Shot is on that same page. And what I wanted to show you here was the DC customer support information. So this is what we're calling our landing page 2. So this is the support information that you will want to use if you would like to call Pearson support. Also notice that there's text, welcome text, that provides you with some additional information and important reminders about the administration on this page. So you see this once you make the selection for the DC Science Field Test. Now into student registration. About creating
the leader has unmuted your line.
How to enroll students.
Your line has been muted. To unmute your line, press *6 or #6, and you will hear a slight tone when unmuted.
The first thing to talk about is you may not need to follow these steps. The majority of the DC Science students have already been loaded into PearsonAccess. So loaded registrations and PMP information for grade 5 and 8. And we did that based off of the PARC EOI assessment. So your students were registered for the PARC EOI assessment. They are now also registered for the DC Science. Biology students were loaded from rosters that had been submitted to OSSE in the fall. We did not load any PMP information for those biology students, just the registration. So PMP information will need to be entered into the system. That will be done manually. Okay. Talk a little bit about registering students in PearsonAccess. This is a manual process. Now, again, you may not have to do this if all of your students have been loaded via the registration file from EOI or the roster that we received from OSSE. Into PearsonAccess, after I walk through this on the slides, the pictures and screenshots are here for you, but I want to give you a feel for how the system works as well. So essentially going in to create, edit students, and to enroll, register, and manage. And that's what you see there in the upper left. What you see is a task screen. Notice at the top of this that we have 4 tabs, is what I'll call it. We've got create, edit students, enroll students, register students, and manage student tests. And each one of these 4 steps we'll walk through in an effort to get that student registered and assigned a test. Once we have put the necessary information, we would then select create.
Never got training. I just sort of figured it out, you know.
The next step then would be to enroll the student. And you can see that we have our organization, and we simply put a check mark next to the school that we would like to use. We would move to registration. You'll note pointed out the check box for the registered student. You can also put in demographic-specific information about your student, ethnicity, race, etc. This is just a continuation of that registration. And with all that information in, go ahead and click Save. And again, walking through the slides fairly quickly, but when we're through this of the slides, we'll go into PearsonAccess and we'll take a look. So at this point, we're on Manage Student Tests, and this is where you're going to assign the specific test to the student. So by grade 5, grade 8, what organization the student is in, and so there's additional information here that you can add related to the test, specific to that student, and then you would hit Create. I'm going to Pearson Access now so that we can see what this looks like as we navigate through. And then, and try that again. All right, that's better. There is our login screen. I can see that I have the DC Science field test in the upper left-hand corner. And we're going to go to Setup and Students. In my taskbar here, I'm going to create and edit a student, and enroll, register, and manage the student test. So I've made my selection here. I click Start. And this allows me to begin my work. Now, your school and what you see in your drop-down here for organization is going to vary dependent upon your permissions and what school you work at. So you select the appropriate organization, put in an identifier, and then the last name of the student and birth date. Then you'll also need the gender. Those are the required fields. Once you've completed that, you're going to hit Create. The top will tell you that what you've done was successful, and then notice that the student that you've just created appears here on the left. I'm going to create another student so that we have a couple to work with.
Oh, great.
And you'll see now that I've created the second student that they're both here in this list for me. This will then allow me to go back and make edits to that student, that first one that I created, if I would like. Once I've gotten all of the students that I want to create completed, I'm going to move on to step 2. And you'll hear if I just click on tab, it'll take me to where I need to go. So you've got the organization that you assign initially, and then your student names follow here. And we're dealing with another school, a student that was moving between schools. You can add here at the top and simply just change the location by adding the check boxes. I'm both in that first school, and I'm going to click Save.
Schools? What'd she say with that one?
At this point, you can move them from one school to another. I wanted to show you that functionality, so I added the second school. Really, we don't need it.
Sort of, one student that was actually working like that. We mistake.
Can you ask her?
If you have a question, please go ahead. I'd be happy to help.
Well, I don't know. I think it's I think I got to do the chat.
I'm going to try and mute the lines again. I know we've been having a little bit of difficulty with the recording and the audio. I'm going to try one more time. So if you don't mind, we're just going to put the training on pause. I can see from notes here that was cutting people. So let's try one more time.
You ask her she can hear us.
The lead has muted your line. To unmute your line, press #6.
All right, it worked. My apologies for the technical difficulty we're having with the audio. If you do have a question, you are able to unmute your line by hitting #6. And this asks that you hit *6 to go back on mute. So this extra school here wasn't intended to create confusion, but rather just to show you that you do have the ability and flexibility within PearsonAccess Next to move student from school to school, to add additional schools at this point if you would like. So we have your students in question, in this case the 2 initially created, at the school that you want them at. You would just click Save. to tell you that you've been successful. So moving forward, we do have our student in the system enrolled at a school, but we haven't yet set up the registration or assigned a test for the student. So that's what we're going to do next. So to add a student, or we can edit an existing student if we would like to. The first thing we need to do is click this registered box. You'll notice that before I click that, all these fields are grayed out and I'm not able to make any selections. If I click that registered, everything opens up for me and I'm able to move forward. So our third field here would be the grade level. I'm going to select 11th grade. And not required, so we're going to move past those. You'll notice that these fields here are not required as well. So the ethnicity, there's some optional state data. None of these fields are required to move forward. So when I hit save, you'll notice that it tells me that it was a success. The changes were saved. I was able to register that student, 11th grader. However, there are some warnings, some critical warnings. And what this is just telling you that there is data that you haven't completed. Not completing this data will not in any way impact the student's ability to test. However, it will impact the data that we have in our system to extract and move forward. Fields, but they do want to give you a heads up that that data should go into the system so that it can be extracted later. I'm going to move to manage tests. And this point is when we will be actually getting that test assigned to that particular student. First, what we'll do here is in your student drop-down, you'll see any students that are available. So I'm going to select that student. I'm going to select biology, so I'm selecting the test, and then I'm going to select my school. You'll see that right now there is nothing coming up in the assessment session location. This would be if you have a test session that you want to pull that kid into that's already created. That should become available. The other reveal here is the test format, and notice that the only format available is the online format, so that'll need to be selected. Same information as the registration with this information here. None of these here will lead to a specific form being assigned to the student. However, you may want to make these indications so that that data is available. I'm going to create, and my changes were successfully saved. So at this point, we've got a student into the system. They're assigned an online biology test. Again, emphasize that this may not be something that you have to do, and it's likely that your student has already been put into the system based on the upload that Pearson has done. Just any questions at this point? Reminder, if you hit #, it will unmute your line. All right. I'm going to go to PowerPoint. And this here is just a reminder that you do have the ability within PearsonAccess Next to imports and exports of data. I mention this because Pearson did load any EOI registrations, as I mentioned previously. However, it's important that you verify that the data that we've loaded for you is what you need. And a quick way to do that may be to do that export. There are instructions on how to do exports if this is something that you're not familiar with. In the support portion of PearsonAccess Next, I'll show you where that documentation is later in the training. But I did want to point out that this ability is available to you as long as you have the permission to do so. All right, I'd like to move into online testing management. So sessions and how they work, how to know whether or not you need a test session, preaching of test content, and then talk about how to manage the different nuances of those test sessions. So here, as with the student registration, so Pearson has done part of test session work for you. And what I mean by that is for any students that we loaded for grade 5 and 8 or biology, We have also assigned them to an online test session. What we have assigned one test session for each school. So if you have 50 students at your school, they have all been added into one test session within PearsonAccess Next. If you wish to leave that way, then you don't need to do anything else. However, we recognize that some of you may want to break those sessions up into smaller groups, and so we will walk through how to make that happen, how to move students from one session to another. So same thing with this section, and that we'll talk about it on the PowerPoint a little bit, and then we'll go into PearsonAccess Next and actually walk through the steps. So here we're under testing, and just select Create, Edit, Test Session. And this shot here is what you will see when you are actually creating the test session. Red boxes here are fields that you'll want to complete. So you'll be naming your test session, telling us what organization that test session is at, what test do you want to take, what form group type, you'll be pulling your students in, and all these things we'll take a look at in PearsonAccess in a moment. What I'd like to point out is that we are offering what's called a read aloud form. And the read aloud form will allow for a proctor to receive an authorization ticket, which will have them log into the test, and then they'll see that the same item that the student is seeing. So it's proctor authorization ticket. That's the only difference, as it will, we're not offering any special forms for that. It'll just allow that proctor authorization to be available. And we'll talk about how to access that in upcoming slides. To have a read aloud session, there are a couple of additional things that you'll need to do when setting up the test session. There's a proctor reads aloud checkbox that will need to be indicated, and in the form group type field, you'll select read aloud. So those two things need to happen, and then that proctor will receive the authorization ticket, and all students in that test session will receive the same form. When we do accommodations, Pearson will be offering a regular form or a main form and then a read aloud form. Accommodated forms will not be available for this assessment. OSSE's provided us with, and will provide you with, the DC Science Assessment to SEDS Crosswalk for accessibility features and accommodations. This document may help you to understand, based on the student needs, what that translates to for testing. So this is just a small snapshot of that document. The link to the full document is at the top of this slide. I'll go ahead and go back to PearsonAccess. As we've created our students, we've essentially finished those tasks. I'll need to hit the Exit Tasks button on the top left, which brings me back to my main view where I can select where I want to go. Testing sessions is where we're going to start. So I can do a couple of things here. If I want to see what sessions are already out there, I can go to Search and do a Show All Results, and that'll mean any test sessions that are have currently been created in my organization. But I also create or edit existing. So that's what we want to do. We're going to create. Brings up then the test session details screen. So we're going to just name it, so the session name, pick our organization. We're going to use the biology. Again, here's that proctor reads aloud. We're not going to use that for this example, but that's where you would indicate it. The form type, I'm going to select main. Now within the operational site, you will also see the option of read aloud here. So your two options will be main or read aloud. The start date is a required field. However, know that that date doesn't automatically do anything. So if you pick the 19th as your start date, but yet you aren't ready on that day and decide to log in the next day, that's okay. This is really just for scheduling purposes for OSSE so that they have an idea of when people are testing. So it's important to get to as close as you can to the date that you're going to test, but it won't automatically do anything in Pearson Access. So all of the things set up that I need to get the test session started, and now I can pull in students. So I clicked in this box. It's going to bring up a list of available students. What I mean by available is the student has not only been created, but they've been registered and have an online test assigned to them. So you continue to select. Now at this point I just have the one student, so it's not bringing others, but it will continue to do that if you have more students. So I'm going to create. Test session has been saved. So out of this, go back to show all results. Here is that test session that we just created. Yeah, did you have a question?
Yeah, me, Seaward. My question is, our students have been uploaded for the science assessment. I created new sessions with the teachers, their specific teacher's name. But when to add the names, it's saying no matches are found. Even pre-populating like they did for the PBA and the EOI.
Okay. My understanding is that they should. I am happy to follow up. If you want to follow up with me separately after the call, we can take a look at it and see what might be happening.
Okay. Okay, thank you. You're
welcome. Great. So creating a session itself is really that easy. It doesn't take too long to do that. My guess is that you all will be doing more moving than you will creating, and so I want to talk about that as well. So I'm going to select a few biology sessions here that I've created for purposes of this training, and I can put check boxes next to them, and then I can go to students and session. Seeing here is on the left a list of the sessions that I selected. If I click on each one of those, it's going to allow me to see the details. So you'll see I've got a few things there. I have a few students. Now if I want to see students in all of the sessions and I hit combine view, it's going to show me all the students in those sessions. So this is a really quick, easy way to see all of the students that you have in any session, regardless of how many you have. Looking for a particular student, you can do that too. You can search here, and you can use these filters here as well to pull up an individual student if you'd like to look that way. All right, I'll switch back to the PowerPoint to go over a few more things, and then we'll come back in and look at them and walk through it. We talked about this already, the show all sessions. This is where we are right now, where we're looking at the combined view, or we can look at sessions individually. Same thing, you can see the students have been populated based on the combined view. And here, start looking at session management. Once you have your students where you need to have them, and we'll talk about the moving back and forth here in just a moment, you'll want to manage that session. And so a screenshot here is showing you that for this particular test session, the Andy test session, if you look over the right of that, you have a few buttons that you can select. But when you're ready to start the test, you would hit the start button. And that is going to then activate your student authorization tickets, which are a resource, and will also allow you to have your students log in to begin the testing process. So it's all done up here over to the right.
Hi, quick question.
Yeah.
This is Bonnie O'Keefe from OSSE. I think I have the answer to Janice's question from earlier.
Oh.
Yeah, your students are already in a session, which they should be, because that was the way we loaded them in. They'd all be in one session. You want to move them to another session. When you're creating a new session, those students won't automatically show up because they've already been assigned to a session. So you either remove them from the session they're currently in, and then they'll all be available to populate into the new session, or you can use the move students task within students in session to move students between sessions that you've already created.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. In just a moment on how you actually do that.
Hello?
Yes. Question? Looks like maybe you're having some audio technical troubles earlier. If you just use #6, it'll unmute your line.
Hear me?
I can.
Awesome. Okay. The question that I had, I just want to verify that our sessions, when we're creating testing sessions, they're supposed to match the small group breakout that we have for our school, correct?
This is Bonnie again. From an OSSE standpoint, you could do it either way. It depends on if you want each test administrator to have access and control over each session. So if you do that way with your staff, then I would recommend breaking them out into separate sessions. But if you, for instance, are controlling PearsonAccess centrally, you can have, for instance, 3 classrooms, but have them within a single session in PearsonAccess. So you can do it either way.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any questions before we continue forward? All right. So I taught the resources that are available. You will get your proctor authorization tickets and your student authorization tickets through this feature. Now I want to point out that you're going to see the word seal codes when you're into that download resource section. However, seal codes are not needed for the DC Science assessment. You can just ignore that. Becoming the Park instance, and Park does use seal codes, it's going to show up in the list, but you don't need it. So please just ignore that. Now, like I said, the proctor testing ticket is up on the top section. Student testing tickets are below, and you have several options how you want to view those tickets. So grid view, list view, or detail. This right here just shows what a student testing ticket could look like. This is just one of the options. But essentially, it's going to provide you, the student authorization ticket will have the name, the test to be taken, and then also provide the username, password, and URL for the specific student. And I'd like to emphasize the importance of these tickets and that they're handed out appropriately. The student name on the ticket is who will be assigned to that test. So it's essential to have that verification process and make sure that the right student is using the right ticket. Example of what the proctor testing ticket will look like, and again, this is for read aloud tests only. Main test, a proctor doesn't need a ticket. Simply provides them with the test URL, the username, and then the password to log in. I want to mention regarding the read aloud is just a side note. So for the read aloud test, when the proctor logs in, responses that they may click are not saved in any fashion. So not only is it important when handing out the student authorization tickets to make sure that the students have the right tickets, but when the read aloud component is introduced, it's important to make sure that that proctor testing ticket does not mistakenly get provided to a student. It does. The student look feel of the interface, they're going to feel like they're taking the test and responses are being recorded, but they're not. So I just to make sure that everyone was aware of that if a student should log in with the proctor ticket, they don't recognize that that's what they've done. And we wouldn't want to have the student go all the way through the test to recognize that that's what happened. So just a reminder there. All right, we're going to go through a couple more slides. management, so again, you can see our session list on the side, so we're still within the same place in Pearson Access Next. This particular screenshot shows that the session has been started, because as soon as that happens, the red stop button appears. That stop button, you won't want to hit that until testing has completed. While testing is going on, after you've hit the start button, you will be able to gauge where each of your students in that test session are at. At the screenshot below, the students are in various testing statuses, and that's what you monitor through this interface. Let's talk a little bit about what some of these statuses mean. A student in a ready status, which is the first student that you see there. What it means is the student has been assigned the test and they've been pulled into the test session, but they've not logged into the test yet. The test is not active. That means just that the student is logged in and currently testing. Which you don't see on this screenshot. So simply just means, oh, it does, I'm sorry, it's there. So exited simply just means that the student has exited out of test now. If they didn't submit the test, they either X'd out or got kicked out for some reason, that will show an exited status. Resume status is the one we don't see pictured here. It'll be yellow in color. And what that means is if the student has exited for whatever reason, sick for the day or got kicked out, whatever the case may be, before they can log back into that test, the test will need to be resumed. And a proctor or a test administrator, you'll resume the test in Pearson Access Next before the student can attempt to log in again. Complete status simply means the test has been submitted. And so that's a completed status. In the test session details, you'll also be able to monitor student test and item progress. You'll be able to see the student's progress of the test, and you can utilize the scroll bar here to scroll down and see more items. In this particular screenshot, we're just showing you one item, but you can see that it has been visited and answered, and it provides the date at which that item was last updated. So if you ever have questions regarding where your students might be in test, this will tell you how to do that. So I mentioned before that there are times that a student will exit the test before actually completed and that they would need to be resumed. So this screenshot here talks a little bit about that. So you can resume the student by going to the individual student, and if you hit that drop down, it will let you resume. That's a way to do that. You can do it at an individual student level. Another way to do that is up in the Tasks menu. You can select Resume Students. After selected which students you want to resume, it will take you to a task that it will allow you to do multiple students at once. So if you have students spread across sessions, or even if they're all in one, you can pick them all and do that as a mass resume rather than doing individual students. Just a screenshot of what you'll see after you've selected the resume task. It'll give you a list of students, and you could then choose which ones to resume. Your bottom two students are not allowed, and it's got the little circle with the line through it, and it's because of their current status. If they're in a completed status, you can't resume that test. And they're in a ready status, which means they've never logged in, there's no need to resume that test. So that is why you see that there. Another thing you might want to do with the student test is mark it complete. And this could mean that the student isn't going to be returning. Maybe they've left sick, and so they're not going to actually be able to log in and hit that submit button. As administrators, you can go in and mark that student complete. This is as simple as just choosing the Mark Students Test Complete in the task menu, and it brings a list similar to what we've seen before, in which you select the students and then indicate Mark Complete. Notice that there is a reason box, and you'll want to provide that rationale there for historical purposes. That's just another box to find that. And these shots are really just kind of showing you the list for various things that you can do with those test sessions. In this case, we're going to remove a student from a test session. And the here is showing the removal of a student that is in ready status. The student may never plan to log in and take the test, so you want to remove them out. And then we get into moving. And this is probably what most people are interested in seeing, because I feel like you will probably be doing this. And so this is where I want to go back into PearsonAccess sessions that we were working with currently. And you can see I've got a couple of different ones. What I want to do here is I want to select, I want to make sure I'm in the right place, sorry. Let me go back here. So here's test sessions. I'm going to do show all. Okay. All right. So I am going to select the tests that I want to work with, or I'm sorry, the sessions. So these bottom 3 sessions. And then I click Go to Students and Sessions. I combine view. I have all these students selected. And I'm going to select Move Students Between Sessions, and then click Start. So what you're going to see here is a list of all of your students. So if you have 20 or 50, you'll have that list. And then 8 of the test sessions that you had selected. And at this point, I can move the student. Oh, it's not going to let me do it for some reason. There we go. And I won't, because we've been in here testing, it's not letting me remove these. As a general rule, you can. So what I would be doing is selecting which section I want that student to be in. I can create a new in here too if I want. Maybe it hasn't been created yet. If I hit the button, the same steps that we took before when we were setting up the test session details, I would put them here and hit create, and it would next comment available. And I'm just going to, you can see that populate. See that this is here, and it becomes an option for me to select it. So this is one way that you could get your students moved from the current session that they're in to another. And because I know that this is something that you all will likely be doing. Does anyone have specific questions? I'm going to that and go back in. All right, so your questions, so that's a good thing. If you run into questions as you are doing this work, don't hesitate to reach out for help. At the end of training, I will show you the PearsonAccess Next Users Guide. Yeah?
Oh, and I got through. Hi, I actually do have a question. I'm familiar with what you were just showing us how to do it, but I was trying to see if our students are registered into the science and they're not. So do we have to go back and import all the students that we had registered for the PBA and EOI?
Your school, your students are not registered for the
I
EOI?
do not see our 5th graders or 8thers. I was in a session, but I don't see any students coming up for our 5th grade teachers.
Well, if this isn't the same thing that we heard earlier. So are you trying to pull them into a new test session?
Yes.
Okay, they're out there in an existing test session.
They're part of the session from the EOI, but
okay.
When I go to the DC Science Field Test Spring, they're not there.
Okay.
This is Miss Seward jumping in. I don't mean to interrupt. I'm able to do my move, but I will ask my colleague who has the question. do any, and this is from a call I made to Pearson last week, are your sessions for the EOY or PBA still in status?
And things that we are finishing our makeups for the OI.
Okay, you still have sessions that are in start status?
We have all our sessions, yes.
Okay, they said that that was the issue. Until your sessions are marked complete and stopped, then you can go into the science and start to.
Oh, that's so helpful.
So that actually shouldn't be the case, I don't think. They shouldn't affect one another at all, just the same way that the science and the EOY overlap in terms of this. So if the person who has that question could follow up with me, Bonnie O'Keefe, I'd be happy to do some investigation with you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I agree with you, Bonnie, that there should be no impact. You should be able to actually.
That's what the rep told me, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, if there's anything that Pearson can do, if you are having trouble finding your students, if you're not sure that they're there, I mean, we can help you to navigate the system to try and locate them. So I'll have those customer service numbers posted again at the end of the training. Don't hesitate to give us a call. Thank you for all the questions. They're great questions. All right, so that's the transferring of the students. Let's go back to the PowerPoint.
This is Franklin. I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can, yes, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, I have a question. I wondered whether, since we had those sessions with all the students, do a upload if we report our students and then we change the sessions file and we upload it. Is that an easy way for us to place them in different sessions?
It can be done, but it's not as easy as simply just changing that test session name and reloading. There are a few things that would need to be done first before you can make that happen. Not put the steps in the training because I'm not sure that whose permissions to do the imports, exports, and I didn't want to confuse anything. But for those of you that do have the ability and want to explore doing some of this work electronically rather than going in manually, my recommendation would be to give Pearson a call, and we can point to documentation and share information with you regarding that process.
Okay.
You were asking the question.
I'm spending a lot of sped features for like leadership phone interviews.
So this slide here, we looked at the Mark Complete functionality just a bit ago, and these are the stories that OSSI has provided us with for that management, the management of that task. If you have a need to have a test voided for whatever reason, OSSI would be tagged for that, and the contact information is provided here. All right, so that's all that I had specifically about PearsonAccess Next. Last couple of slides here are on documentation and support. Go through those, and then we have time for questions that anyone might have. So I mentioned earlier that DC Science, we are using the same instances part. So I think many of you already have familiarity with the system, which is fantastic. Training materials and things of that nature, the existing materials are what you're going to want to use. And on this slide, I pointed out just a few of them. There are a lot of resources in the system and available for you to assist. And actually go out there in just a moment, and we'll pull up the support page, and I can show you some of that. A couple slides here kind of just point out, where you might go for assistance. And Pearson, our support, we can help you to navigate PearsonAccess and manage student registrations and data, how to get sessions set up, and where your resources are at, and proctor caching. Those are the things that you would call Pearson for, and we're more than happy to help you with that. I provided, again, the toll-free data, the toll-free number to contact Pearson. There's also an email that you can use if you prefer to communicate with that.
And please note that this number, the Pearson support number for science is different from the one for Parks. So If you call the park number with a science question, you might get a confused person.
Right. And them a heads up that, you know, if that will happen, they'll be able to warm transfer you to a DC science representative, but they'll get you in the queue. It'd be definitely faster for you if you're using the DC number. The last slide here is just a list of things that you may go to OSSI with. So if you have questions about the testing schedule or accommodations, unusual circumstances, test security, unsubmitting tests or avoiding a test, any school agencies or questions about testing policies or state communications. All those types of questions should be directed to OSSI, and the contact information is provided for you. We want to go in and show you where you can find documentation that will help you with setup and navigation. Some of you may prefer to use this over calling because it does provide step-by-step. So I'm in PearsonAccess next, and I'm going to go to Support, Documentation. You're going to see a big, long list of stuff. So hardware and software requirements, all sorts of information. You can do search on keywords to find what you're looking for. Over here to the right are some of the top training resources, and the very first one is PearsonAccess Next Online Users Guide. The online document, you can get a PDF of it, but note that if there are any updates or anything that happen throughout the administration, those changes won't be reflected. But you're always looking at the most current up-to-date information into the table of contents, and you'll notice that all of this is hyperlinked. So I'm just trying to pick a good one to go to. You can go to any of these, and let's just look at creating an online test session. So I'm going to click that. It's going to give me step-by-step information on how to create that test session. I can see if I can find another one. Here's moving students between test sessions. We talked about that. Again, it walks you through step-by-step. You can get screenshots. So I find this a very helpful resource, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew where that was. So check anything PearsonAccess Next you'll find in this guide. Okay, that's all the specific information that I had to share. We do have time for questions if anyone else on the line had anything. And reminder, it's #6 to unmute.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You guys have certainly touched on this, but I was hoping you could review the key differences between Park Setup Administration and the DC Science Assessment Administration. I know there are limited accessibility and accommodation features available. There's no seal code. There's a different support number. But if you guys could review any other key differences, that would be really helpful.
I think you honestly have hit the primary differences. The limited accommodations, no seal codes, the support number, those are huge. I think what comes to mind for me, like immediately, is that it's just a one-section test, which, you know, we don't need seal codes, so you would have seen that. I'm not really thinking of any other big differences. I think those are the big three. I don't know, Sarah or Bonnie, is there anything that you would add to that?
I would just add, not necessarily an administration difference. We don't yet have practice tests for DC Science, but if you have students new to the platform, you can certainly use the Park Test Navigate tutorials to introduce them to the navigation and everything. You can note that won't be focused on science content. And the other thing would be that the manuals for science are available on our website and are shorter and produced by OSSI, so please refer to those if you have any questions on sort of the step-by-steps of science administration. And of course, no paper.
Very good.
No paper-based option. Okay, thanks.
Question. Questions?
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, Amanda. I'm wondering, are we still doing the chain of custody forms and all the other documentation we've been doing similar to PARC?
So, yeah, I'll speak to that. So in the manual it says that school days can use the custody forms if they'd like, but they are not required for this administration PC science. So if it's just part of your school policy and part of what you've been doing, you to keep it or make your own forms, but we won't be requiring them.
Great.
Any questions?
Joy, just one thing that I was going to mention, that we did record the training session, and we'll be sending that over to Nikki for posting to the ISU website. That'll be up available by tomorrow, I would think. Nikki, does that sound right?
She's on mute, and she's struggling with that, but she says thumbs up.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Well, if any questions do come up as you get into the system and you're trying to do your work, again, don't hesitate to use the support information on the website, and always feel free to call Pearson support as well. Thank you all for being patient with us at the beginning of the WebEx while we work through some of the technical difficulties. We appreciate your patience on that. There, Aussie, did you have any additional questions or anything that you wanted to talk about before we close the training?
I think so. Just a reminder to folks on the call today that we are having our accommodations webinar for DC Science tomorrow from 1 to 2 p.m. So if you have further questions on accommodations or want to dive deep into accommodations, please join us tomorrow.
Okay. Well, for joining everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah.